Hey everyone, Brendan Sander here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to a run through of my AC/DC CD collection. So the band formed in 1973, which in 2026 means the band now is 53 years old. And what's amazing is the band has never broken up. They have had two lead singers in Bon Scott and Brian Johnson, though if we throw in Axel Rose, we could say there were three, but I really keep to it saying that it's just two lead singers. More on that later when we get around to that part of things. But in all, the band has released 17 studio albums. That's taking into account the two Australian and then all of the international versions that then come after that. So 17 studio albums. I'm holding out hoping that we get one more, an 18th studio album before they call it a day. But of course, we'll have to wait and see what unfolds with the band. For me, I've got 32 CDs in my collection to run through with you guys. We're going to do that here in just a bit. But before we start, if you're new to my channel and haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like. All those things do help support my channel. I greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, if you turn on notifications, you'll never miss an episode and stay up to date on cool things like this, where I'm running through my AC/DC CD collection. So I'm going to do this chronologically as best I can. But as I was mentioning at the top of the show, they have some different time frames in terms of when they release things locally in their homeland, Australia, versus internationally. And then sometimes where things didn't get released in the US until later. So causes all kinds of hoopla. But we'll do the best we can here. So kicking off in 1975, the band released High Voltage, the Australian edition. And in that same year, we also get TNT, also only released in Australia. Now, in 1976, we get the international edition of High Voltage, which is made up of those two Australian albums. And this is the one that has really taken over, that everybody knows. And for a big part of the world, this is the first AC/DC album. But they did have those other two, and the tracks that don't make it onto the international edition do turn up on some later releases, which we'll talk about when we get to those. So first major release, High Voltage, and then immediately after that, we've got some more hoopla going on with the fact of Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, which has a different cover in Australia, and this one here being the UK edition of it, and I guess they would refer to that as the international edition of the album, but it didn't get a release in the US until 1981. So for the US market, this wasn't seen as their third studio album. In fact, with this being considered the first one, often people think of Let There Be Rock as their second album, but in fact, it's not their second album. So Let There Be Rock, and it's going to get complicated with trying to keep track of what number is what. So we're just going into this as 1977. We're still in the Bon Scott era of things. I've got a combination between some of these digipack editions, these remastered ones, which I have to say I like the way the booklets are done like that, meaning they're held in a large area like that. Unfortunately, they didn't do any bonus tracks when they did these remasters. And I've also got some jewel case edition remasters. It's the same thing as these, but I believe these were, I want to say these might have been UK edition. I could be wrong. But wherever the jewel case editions were, I came across a bunch of them and picked those up. And if I can ever find the rest of these in jewel case edition remasters, I would replace them. But Let There Be Rock, 1977. One of my favorites of the Bon Scott era, maybe even my overall favorite, though. You know, how can anyone say anything against Highway to Hell? But I love Powerage. This thing here with Rock and Roll Damnation, Down Payment Blues, Riff Raff, Sin City, Gone Shootin'. I mean, so many good tracks on this release here. This one's 1978. Again, it's one of the remastered editions. And I have to say that much like the Van Halen Warner Brothers remasters that were like night and day and so much better than the originals, when AC/DC did their remastering, same thing. If you've never checked out the remastered editions and you still have your original CD copies of things, it is a whole new sound to check those out and would highly recommend it. Now, when I was putting this together, I don't know why, but I thought AC/DC had a ton of live albums. In fact, they don't. They've actually only officially released 3, and the first one that comes up is If You Want Blood. And what a great live album this is. I'm a fan of single disc live albums, and that's what this is. It's not one of the doubles, though doubles were really popular in the 70s. But it's just a lot of great tracks on here, good sound quality, all that sort of stuff. And of course, now we get to the final album with Bon Scott, Highway to Hell. And again, a remastered jewel case edition of it. One of the all-time classic albums. And the fact that AC/DC actually has 2 of these and they're back-to-back, absolutely insane. But as we all know the story, Bon Scott passes away and they bring in Brian Johnson for Back in Black in 1980, meant as a tribute to Bon Scott. But this album here just goes above and beyond and charts its own path and certainly sets the world afire with Brian Johnson on the vocals. And that doesn't happen very often for bands being even bigger with their second vocalist than with their first vocalist, building upon all of that success that Bon helped them form. But when you have an album that was as big as this and your singer passes away and you come back with one as good as Back in Black, maybe one of the greatest all-time rock albums ever, and the largest selling of all rock albums ever. I think it's somewhere in the 60 million copies that it has sold. It's only number 2 or maybe number 3 behind Thriller, which I think is still holding on at the number 1 spot, but it is the number 1 rock album out there. All right, next up, for those about to rock, this one here is 1981. It's also produced by Robert John Muttling, who produced the last album. This one here, good album, but just nowhere near as good as Back in Black, in my opinion. But a lot of great songs. I think if the band would perform more of the songs from this album in concert, the album would hold on better and have sold better over the years. But a typical thing AC/DC does is after the album has come out, you're lucky if they play one song from it thereafter. And in most cases, they just drop all the material, period, and almost never play any of that. Now, as we move through the 80s era and beyond, this is where things start to take a downturn for the band, but I really liked the 80s era of the group. And so, Flick of the Switch, 1983, opening track, Rising Power. I really like this album. The House is on Fire, the song Flick of the Switch, Nervous Shakedown. I think this album is great top to bottom, and I always rank this really high in my collection. Now, in 1984, we have one of those releases that's out of sequence where they gather up 74 Jailbreak 10-year anniversary, and they put together some of the material that didn't make it onto the international edition of High Voltage. And so this album here, which has Jailbreak on it, but also You Ain't Got a Hold on Me, Show Business, Soul Stripper, and Baby Please Don't Go. And I remember picking this up as an EP price, which I mean it is, but it just, I don't know, man, it clicked just right despite it being older material from the 70s. I always loved it. I always thought these were some great songs and couldn't believe that these had been left off of that international release at the time. But yeah, so in the US, we didn't get that until 1984, but it actually has material from, earlier than that. And probably my all-time favorite AC/DC album, and I know it goes against the grain, but I love Fly on the Wall. This thing from start to finish is such a great album for me. A lot of people don't like the production on it. I have no issues with the production whatsoever. But this one here, title track, the opening number, Shake Your Foundation, Sink the Pink, Hell or High Water, Back in Business. So many good tracks on this album. To this day, I will always talk high about this album, and it's always ranking up there around number 3 for me in my countdowns when I do it. And of course, you can imagine what spots number 1 and 2 would be. But after that, we get Who Made Who, which was actually a soundtrack, though it had the song Who Made Who, new track on it for it. And then it collected together a bunch of other things, a couple additional songs from the movie Maximum Overdrive, the Steven Spielberg film, is on here. I think it's DT, and I'm trying to remember what else it might be. Chase the Ace. I think those are ones that were from the film. So those two, along with Who Made Who. But then you get songs like You Shook Me All Night Long, and they made a video at the time of this release, and that's the video that you're actually seeing for it. That's not the one from 1980 off of Back in Black. So the release of a video for it at the time of this probably also really boosted sales of Back in Black, but also of this release here. And this is basically their greatest hits out there, because the band does not have an official greatest hits, but you get songs like Hell's Bells on here. And I think also the reason that I like Fly on the Wall so much is that a number of tracks are on here, like Shake Your Foundations is on here. And they played a number of tracks from Fly on the Wall in the movie. So I'm hearing it in the movie. I'm hearing it on the soundtrack. Everything around that time frame was just built into and around that release. So it's up there for me. Now, one that never really clicked with me, and so this one usually is a pretty low ranking album for me, near the end, in fact, Blow Up Your Video. Songs are all right, but they just seem run-of-the-mill for me, though I know that a bunch of other people love this album. It came out in '88, but the songs Heat Seeker and That's the Way I Want to Rock and Roll. I'm trying to remember if Mean Streak was a video or not, but there's some good tracks, like I said, but nothing that great. And they don't, of course, play anything from that going forward. So nothing from that. Nothing from Fly on the Wall gets played live. Nothing from Flick on the Switch gets played live, which is really unfortunate in my opinion. But the band bounces back with The Razor's Edge in 1990. And I don't know how that happens. I don't know if it's because Bruce Fairbairn produced this album, amazing producer that could always really pull the best out of a lot of bands, or whether it was just the uniqueness of the song Thunderstruck that pushed this over the top. But that production was so crisp on this thing, sounded so good. Though my favorite song on here is Money Talks, and I've got a cassette single of it. $3.49 back in the day, picked it up from Peaches. Bought it because of Borrowed Time. Now this I bought as a second copy, still sealed. I had an open copy at the time. And that song, Borrowed Time, will later turn up on a box set release. And so I've got a CD edition of it, no longer have to go to the cassette for it. But I loved that B-side. But then also, Are You Ready? So 3 major singles and videos, but of course they only play Thunderstruck in concert, though so many other good songs. And Mistress for Christmas, that just recently found out that apparently that song was written about Trump. So I don't know if that's true or not, but in an interview recently, I don't remember if it was Angus or Brian Johnson, but one of them mentions that. So put a whole new spin on that, but great Christmas song. All right, the band then does Simply Live. Second live release. This is the single disc edition. There is a 2 CD edition of it, and I have the limited edition one that actually comes in the long box and opens up, fold-out poster in it, and it came with the AC/DC dollar bill. I couldn't find it, though, in time for making of this video, but I have this one here. I didn't know at the time there was a single disc edition. I found out about that years later, and as I mentioned early on with the first live album, If You Want Blood, I prefer single disc live albums. I like to listen to things succinctly. I don't want to take out discs and have to change them where there's a pause in it. I just want to hear something straight through. So once I found out that, I purchased this one, which is remastered edition 2, and probably the only version that's out there now. I don't know if they still sell the 2 CD edition or not, but I've got that one. I've got the other one in the collection. And then unfortunately, 5 long years before we finally get Ball Breaker in 1995. And this was produced by Rick Rubin. It would go platinum, which in 1995 was unheard of for rock bands, especially ones from the 70s and 80s. So that was kind of a big deal that AC/DC was able to come back and, despite all the grunge and everything else, sound the way they sounded and put out an album and be successful with it. I thought that was really, really cool at the time. I wish they would perform songs off of this too, because it was a successful album for them, but they don't. The song Hard as a Rock has a very classic sound and intro to it. I picked up the CD single of it at the time because it came with a poster inside, as it says there, limited edition poster inside. And I wanted to be able to listen to these 2 tracks while I was waiting for the album. The B-side on here was Caught With Your Pants Down, though not an unreleased song. But I picked that up, and I remember it was inexpensive. I think it was like $3 or something at the time. It was kind of a sale thing, like get this 2-song sampler sort of thing. But I did pick this up when I found a CD single for Hail Caesar, another single off of that album, but it's because it came with a guitar pick that I wanted it, and it actually has Whole Lotta Rosie live in Europe on here. It was cool that they had a couple extra cool tracks. This one also had Whiskey on the Rocks. So it was cool and worth getting, but I wanted that guitar pick in it in particular. The guitar pick is no longer in this. I since have taken it out and put it with my guitar pick collection. So now, crazy thing is, we have to wait 5 more years for another AC/DC album, and we get Stiff Upper Lip in 2000. And I got to meet the band. The band did not normally do in-store autograph sessions. This was in New York City at Virgin Records, Virgin Megastore, I think they called it at the time. It was a 3-story record store in the middle of Times Square, one of my absolute favorite places to go. And I got to meet the guys there, got all of them to autograph it. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe this was their first ever autograph session, at least outside of Australia, but I'm pretty sure that's the way they were stating it. It might have just been the first in the US, I don't know, but it was a huge, huge deal. And so that was just great getting to go to that, meet all 5 of the guys. This release here comes out in 2007 and is called Plug Me In, bonus CD. And I believe this was, I don't remember if you could buy this just standalone separate. I think you could. I think you bought this separate, and then you got like a $3, it was like $3, and then you got a $3 coupon towards this 3-disc DVD box set. But this was a CD of 3 live songs from it. So you get Rock and Roll Damnation, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, and Thunderstruck, all from different live shows. Live in Glasgow, 78, live in Detroit in 83, and live in Munich, 2003. So Plug Me In, little 3-song EP, only available, I believe, at Best Buy. So that was a cool thing. And as you can see, we went through a lot of AC/DC releases before we actually got to, something unique like that. And we have a few more things like that in this collection to get to. But AC/DC is not one of those bands that has put out a lot of stuff. And they don't have, as I mentioned, they don't have greatest hits collections and stuff like that. And they've only done 3 live albums. We got another one of those to come down the road. But right now, the next album, 2008, Black Ice, and this one here is what I think they call the ebook edition, and it's got raised lettering on the front, and you can see it's black on black, and Song titles are on the back side there. And this was just I don't know if this was specifically limited edition, but there were multiple versions. I think you could get a yellow one, maybe a red one. I don't know. I got the blue one. I liked that one. But I later on did pick up a jewel case edition of it because this thing just doesn't fit the norm of anything else. And I decided to keep that just separately as a limited edition one. So I did buy the jewel case edition of this one. And of course it has the red. So maybe it was red, blue, and yellow, because I do remember yellow editions of this, but the red one probably looks the best. So nothing different on the track listing of those. But what a great album that is. Black Ice was a really great, solid album. I think better than Stiff Upper Lip. So that was great when they came back. But, you know, that was an 8-year gap between Stiff Upper Lip in 2000 and then Black Ice in 2008. And so then within there, and in 2010, we got kind of what is the first greatest hits, but it's another soundtrack. It was the Iron Man 2 soundtrack. It's all AC/DC songs, everything on here. I don't know if it has something from every release, but it did have War Machine from Black Ice. So it did even have something from their latest album, which I thought was pretty cool. But unlike Who Made Who, nothing new on here, nothing rare, nothing unreleased, nothing like that. Just a collection of their best tracks. Great for the movie. I picked it up just to have in the collection, but it isn't something I ever pull out. I'm also an albums person. I'd rather listen to an album than to a greatest hits for the most part. And if I am going to listen to greatest hits, I want it to have some rarity or different single mixes, a new track, something like that on it. So we finally get the last live album, and this is 2012 Live at River Plate. And what's kind of interesting is they had put out the home video edition, the DVD edition of this, and I believe this came out a year or two, or maybe even longer after it. So the CD release of this did not come out at the same time as it. And so it was kind of a letdown because I'd already watched the video of this thing and they had put out, and maybe that's what I'm thinking, because now I'm realizing there's a lot of live home videos by AC/DC. So I feel like there's a lot of live albums, but in fact, they've only released 3. And currently this is the only double that's out there, double live album. And so it kicks off with Rock and Roll Train because that is what they were promoting at the time. But we get a lot of great stuff. Black Ice is performed on here, Big Jack. So they did a number from the album War Machine. And that was cool because they weren't generally doing that, but we did get a number of new ones performed. And so it did make for this release being worthwhile. But I think that was just kind of a tide me over type thing, because between 2014 and the next studio album, 2008, then to 2014, we finally get Rock or Bust. And this one here also, I guess you'd consider it limited edition. I don't know if they're still selling it this way, and what they call lenticular, right? Where it looks like it's exploding. So that's the cover of this thing. Again, if I ever find a jewel case edition, I will be picking that up, but 11 tracks. I got an opportunity to go to a listening party for this, and Angus Young and Brian Johnson came out along with Brendan O'Brien, the producer, at the end of it, just to say a thank you to everyone. It wasn't like a Q&A or anything, wave pictures, that kind of stuff, but they showed up in New York City for the listening party. And I thought that was really cool. I mean, I wish they had done autograph sessions and stuff, but you got a free shirt when you went to it. They had all kinds of different cool things going on. They were doing AC/DC tattoos on people, whoever wanted them. I think they were free, kind of stuff. So it was a cool night. Didn't get an AC/DC tattoo, but got to listen to the album from start to finish. And so this album too holds a special place in my heart and mind because I got that opportunity to listen to it that way, which is the same way Stiff Upper Lip, because on the day of release, they played that thing over and over while we were standing in line waiting. And so those kind of albums sink in a lot more when you have an event or something that is going on with it. It's much the same way if you go see a band live on that tour. So first band I ever saw live was AC/DC on the Razor's Edge tour. So that album too, obviously, is going to stand out for me. All right, don't know what year, 2015, says so on the back. So this is a bootleg, unofficial, though they make it look official. And I guess it is official if you, because it is officially released, I think, in Russia. It's an AC/DC 2 CD greatest hits, but it is not sanctioned by the band. I've managed to find a number of these. They're all done up the same way with the same information on them. So whether they're made to look real or they're just unofficial releases in other countries, I don't know. But this greatest Hell's hits does have material all the way up through Rock or Bust on it. And I like the tracks that they chose because they definitely do it across the whole board, including putting on songs on here. Some of them like Big Gun that was on the Last Action Hero soundtrack. And a few others that are like those. So you get some extra tracks that wouldn't normally make it to a greatest hits, but make it worthwhile like that. So this I do pull out because it's also not in sequential or chronological order. It kicks off with Thunderstruck, Shoot to Thrill, then Big Gun, Fire Your Guns, You Shook Me All Night Long, Heat Seeker, Back in Black, Who Made Who, then Rock or Bust, so it jumps forward, right? So it's a pretty cool back and forth collection of material if you really want some kind of an overview. These are out there, and like I said, I've got one of these for David Gilmour and Bryan Adams and a number of other artists, Steve Vai, stuff like that, so they're pretty cool. Now, in 2016, and I'm not sure exactly if that was just the year this is recorded or not, but during the Rock or Bust World Tour, Brian Johnson develops hearing issues and is immediately told he has to come off the road. And what's crazy is the band fires him and then goes to hire a new singer. And they were debating, were they going to pull in? Who are they going to pull in? Who is going to be kind of, quote, the new singer? And then Axel Rose volunteers to step in so they can finish the tour. They don't have to cancel the tour, reschedule all the dates, but he was just a fill-in singer. He was never an official member or anything. A lot of people wanted the band to release a live album at a minimum. A lot of us speculated and hoped we would get a new studio album with Axel Rose. None of that came to fruition, obviously, but I do have a bootleg of a Philadelphia show in 2016 with Axel Rose singing, and so I had to get that and have it in the collection. This tour I had tickets for the Rock or Bust tour, and I don't know if it was literally the show right before mine or what it was, but it got canceled, and then all the shows got postponed. And initially, I didn't quite know whether I was going to keep my ticket or not keep my ticket. Of course, when they announced that Axel Rose was going to be performing the shows, I was over the moon. I had already seen AC/DC on the Razor's Edge. So the fact that I could then see Axel Rose fronting AC/DC was a once-in-a-lifetime type thing, and one of my favorite shows that I've ever seen to this day. Really, really good. Interesting how the music of AC/DC, I think, is actually a better fit for Axel's voice than his own material in Guns N' Roses, meaning he sounded so good live. And this release here, he sounds really good live. But with the Guns N' Roses material, it can really be hit or miss whether he is going to have a good night or an off night in terms of that. All right, 2020, the pandemic rolls around, but AC/DC does not disappoint. They do not let us down, and they release Power Up. Did not see this album coming. It's Brian Johnson returns, Cliff Williams returns, Phil Rudd returns. All these guys were out of the group. The group had like dwindled down to just Angus Young at this point. And he basically rebuilt the group back up and brought everyone back to make this album. And then unfortunately, though, with the pandemic, they didn't go out and tour the first few years. And I don't know whether they went out in 2023 or not, but they eventually did start going out and playing shows. And I think they were even playing shows as of last year. I don't know if we have anything on the books yet for this year, but I'm still hoping that we get one more album from them. I think this was a great album. Nothing's ever going to live up to the early days of stuff, but Power Up was really good. I did get a limited edition version of the album itself. And if you press the button on the side, it does that. I'm not going to play through the whole thing. The CD was in the side of it here. And there we go, get it to just slide out. So it was like that. What's cool is the thing, it's not on a battery, it's on a USB rechargeable battery that's in there, because when I took it out, it didn't play. But then I remembered that it had the USB thing, so I just pulled this cable out, plugged it in, charged it up, able to show you guys. And so you don't have to worry about replacing a battery on it. Nothing else special about it. I ended up, I think I ended up getting this first and then later deciding to buy this, or maybe it was the other way around. I can't remember, but I'm glad I got it. I remember doing a little unboxing of this at the time when it came out, and it was just kind of a cool thing. You know, it put a smile on my face to get it. A little something extra special, collector's edition wise. Now I realized partway through while I was going through that I actually left out two things, meaning I didn't do them chronologically, and I opted to just wait until the end to do it. And that is the Bonfire box set, which is 1997. And this thing here was 4 CDs. There's 5 discs, but I think it's the Let There Be Rock, the movie soundtrack, which is a 2-disc. And so we do get that as a soundtrack also. And then you get Live in Atlantic Studios, another live release. So again, that's, I think, where my mind was thinking that the band has more live out there than those 3 official live albums. But it's box set related. You also get Volts, which has a cool stuff. So all of this stuff focusing on the Bon Scott era, but they throw in Back in Black, and I didn't like that, though they're saying, well, it was a tribute to him, so they included it, but I think it was just a way to sell more copies of this album. No need for it to be in here. There was nothing bonus about it, but it was in like a gatefold replica LP style packaging kind of thing, so it was a little unique in that regard. You got a poster, a book, bottle opener. It was kind of cool. And then the mega one, Backtracks, and this one here is the one that is actually a replica amp, and we'll play. You can see the speaker on the top of it, but it's got you know, knobs and volume and everything, and you can where is it? There we go. You can actually plug a guitar into this and play. I think this was website only exclusive. Very, very cool. The top of this thing just pulls off, and then you can see there's vinyl, there's a book, there's CDs, and the amount of what is in this one here has a couple extra CDs worth of material than what was on the version. This one, which is what came out for everybody else. And this one here, I think, is a 3-disc edition. And it is. So it's got a Studio Rarities CD1. And that one's got the song Borrowed Time. It's got Big Gun, Cyberspace, but it's got all those cool ones. It's got other tracks too that were left off of the international edition of High Voltage. So more stuff like that was appearing here. And then it's got a CD2 of Live Rarities. And then it's got DVD in here called Family Jewels Disc 3. So there's a DVD, Family Jewels Volumes 1 and 2 that had already been released. So this is a 3-disc set. So I believe there's 3 CDs in the main box set. And it's 2 CDs of Live Rarities, which is the difference. And Studio rarities, the way that they broke it down in the main box set was different, but here they separate it as live and studio, and they made it much more the way that I like to listen to my material. And I got this for 20 bucks. So it was worthwhile to buy and have this one, because not only is the format different in the way that it is, there's additional content that's in here, so I would never want to get rid of this. But the one that I'm going to pull out and listen to is going to be this. And so that's the extent of AC/DC stuff. So the 32 CD things, and I was counting my box sets as one a piece. So even though there's multiple discs inside those, I wasn't counting them individually. And just as we wrap up here, I did want to point this out. I do have a Brian Johnson solo album, so to speak, called Strange Man. It is all material that he recorded when he was with his band Geordie, but they went in and remixed and added some additional guitar and stuff to it and made it have an 80s sound and released it at a time when AC/DC was really booming. And I love this disc. I think this is fantastic. It's never been issued to CD. Not at least in that format as Strange Man. Other versions of Brian Johnson and Geordie have come out, but never the same track listing as this, at least as I've found. But they must have done it to a number of tracks, because I've gotten other CDs that have different track listings that also have that 80s sound to it. I eventually just made my own CD, burn copy of it, copied the album art and made one to have it. So I did want to point this out because I think it is so good. And as an AC/DC fan, I do recommend Brian Johnson's Strange Man as something worth checking out. Just a cool little curiosity type thing there. But there you go, my 32 CD AC/DC collection. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As I said, not as much rare type stuff out there as other bands have, but cool nonetheless. And all the stuff AC/DC has ever put out has always been top notch and on par, So kudos to them for never scraping the bottom of the barrel, so to speak, or just throwing things out there and rehashing things over and over and over, as some bands do. I do have to respect that, even though I would like much, much more material from them. And again, still hoping that we get that 18th studio album eventually. It has been 5 years, going on 6 now, since Power Up. Could this be the year? You never know, because everything with AC/DC is so tight-lipped, you never know what's around the corner. As soon as I post this video, they could announce something, but I've waited long enough, so I decided to do this CD collection for you guys. All right, everyone, take care, have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.